At the commencement of the narrative, we are introduced to a gentleman named Barry, who transported several bags brimming with cash to his residence. Observing this, Barry grew increasingly concerned about where he could possibly store such a substantial amount of money. The house was utterly packed, leaving no available space to conceal it. Whenever he attempted to dig, he unearthed previously buried money. Now Barry contemplated concealing this money within the horse stable, but the moment he opened the door to stash the money, an avalanche of cash cascaded upon him. The entire stable was littered with banknotes, yet he consistently had. There was not an excessive amount of money. A few years prior, he had been merely a pilot for a commercial airline. Barry's girlfriend Mary is exceptionally beautiful, and he was quite content with his life. Barry believed his entire life would proceed happily in this manner, but then unexpectedly, trouble came knocking at his door. One evening when Barry arrived at his hotel to unwind, a bearded man approached him and began blackmailing him. He accused Barry of smuggling cigars in exchange for money. Barry started sweating heavily because if this info got out, it would ruin his reputation. His pilot's license would be revoked for good. What would he do with his life then? Seeing Barry's growing anxiety, the man revealed he was a CIA operative named Monty. He then introduced Barry to his team and took him to a secret spot where they kept aircraft. When Barry saw the fastest plane of that time, his eyes lit up with excitement. This plane had two very powerful engines. He started looking at it with great interest. Monty was very pleased to see this, and he told Barry about his mission. Barry had to fly this plane over enemy countries in Central America. He needed to fly the plane a bit low to the ground so that secret photos could be taken. But this was a covert mission, and Barry couldn't share this information with anyone, not even his girlfriend Lucy. However, at this moment, Barry didn't care about anything else. He was just eager to fly his dream plane. Monty opened the door so he could test drive the plane. When he got home, he told Lucy that he had to quit his current job because he got a great opportunity with another company. He didn't mention anything about his mission. Lucy found it quite strange. Why would a pilot leave a captain's job at an airline to work for an unknown company? That same night during a flight, Barry suddenly left the cockpit. He was ready to start a new chapter in his life. After that, Barry became Monty's man. He would fly the plane across Central American countries, facing all sorts of dangers. He faced challenges to take secret photographs. Every journey was very dangerous, but Barry started enjoying it. When Monty showed the photographs to his seniors, they praised them a lot. However, Barry still hadn't told Lucy anything. They both got married and now have a daughter, but Barry's income wasn't significant anymore. Barry told Monty that, "Look, brother, one can't make ends meet with this much. Something needs to be done." However, Monty didn't act on the situation. Now, Monty gave Barry a new mission in Panama. Barry was used to such tasks. He completed it easily. Soon, 1980 began. Barry stopped in Colombia to refuel his plane when suddenly, 3 men came looking for him. These thugs openly carried guns. They threatened Barry and made him get into a vehicle. Barry had no choice, so he quietly went with them to their base. Yes, they met their leader Pablo Escobar, who knew Barry's true identity and that he was taking secret photos of Central American countries. Hearing this, Barry got nervous and started explaining that he only worked for an ordinary company so that the CIA wouldn't find out. Pablo already knew the whole truth, so he laughed. Pablo told Barry that he didn't want to harm him, just needed him to do a bit of smuggling. He wanted Barry to fly and take some of his goods there. After that, Pablo took Barry to his farm, explaining how difficult smuggling goods was. He needed Barry's help for this task. For every delivery completed, he would pay Barry $2,000 per kilo. Barry was very happy to hear this. This would earn him much more than taking photos, but when he understood the whole system, Barry, where's the fun in this? The runway that Pablo built was very short, and many pilots had died trying to take off. Barry suggested that they make the runway a bit longer since they had no shortage of money, but Pablo said if you want to work, then do it. Otherwise, leave. There's no need to give suggestions here. Hearing this, Barry's ego was hurt. He decided that he would show them he could take off on such a short runway. He said that the delivery wouldn't happen according to their plan. He would decide how the goods would be delivered. He told Pablo, "The location was mentioned that there is an open field there. I will take the plane very low and drop the goods. You send your men there to pick up the goods." Pablo agreed and had all the goods loaded. As soon as the preparations to leave were complete, Barry saw that one of Pablo's men was sitting in the pilot's seat inside the plane. But Barry explained that this plane already has a lot of cargo and it can't carry any more weight. Blaine is fine. He absolutely must disembark. Pablo instructed the man to disembark, and subsequently, Barry began to depart. Pablo handed Barry a cross as a token of good fortune. Barry took off, completely unaware that Pablo and his associates were wagering on whether he could even manage to get the aircraft airborne. Barry took off with complete understanding, but due to the substantial load, the aircraft dipped momentarily before he successfully navigated it through the turbulence. However, as soon as he entered the US airspace, he came into the military's radar. Unaware of this, Barry quickly moved towards the point where he had to drop the goods. Barry engaged the autopilot, opened the hatch below, and dropped the goods. With this, Barry's delivery was complete. The subsequent time Barry visited Colombia, Pablo and his siblings organized a welcome celebration for him and presented him with a bag filled with the money he had accumulated. However, before Barry could fully revel in his joy, several soldiers arrived and encircled Pablo's bungalow. Pablo instructed Barry to remain inside while he went out to manage the situation, but Barry was never one to remain idle. Amidst the intense gunfire, his anxiety was escalating. Barry grabbed the money and ventured outside to locate Pablo and his associates, but the army personnel captured him, and a few days later, Pablo and his men were released as innocent, but only Barry remained in jail. While Barry was very distressed being locked up, Monty suddenly arrived there. Barry had several bruises on his face and 2 of his teeth were broken. However, Monty informed him that he had been accused of drug smuggling and that the police would search his house at 6 a.m. the next morning. Hearing this, Barry was very upset. He did not want to drag his family into all this. He pleaded continuously with Monty for help. Barry persistently pleaded with Monty for assistance. Barry was unaware that he was becoming ensnared in Monty's intricate scheme. Monty replied, "Indeed, I can assist you, but you must do something in exchange. Recently, the government in a neighboring nation has undergone a change, and numerous individuals are opposing the newly appointed president. Presently, the United States government desires us to discreetly send financial aid and weapons to those opposing the government, ensuring that no one discovers our involvement. America's name must remain unmentioned, and the responsibility for this mission has been assigned to..." The responsibility was assigned to Ponty, and now Monty even possesses a proficient pilot. Monty couldn't expunge Barry's criminal record, but he suggested to Barry that relocating was necessary. "There's a small town named Mina. Meet me there." Mary didn't have any alternative. Consequently, he went home, awakened Lucy and his daughter, and instructed, "Pack your bags swiftly. We will be departing shortly." Lucy grew suspicious of Barry's behavior. She persistently inquired about what was happening, but Barry was in no condition to provide any explanation. He was not in a suitable position to provide an explanation. He simply instructed Lucy to place her trust in him. As soon as morning arrived, the entire family swiftly packed up their belongings and departed from the place. The trio reached a small town named Mina, inhabited by merely around 2,000 individuals. They arrived at a dilapidated house where Monty had arranged for their accommodation. Barry had just reached there when he noticed that Monty had also arrived and went outside to meet him. Monty presented Barry with an unexpected surprise. There was an airport with approximately 2,000. It was a relatively small airport. Monty generously gifted it to Barry, stating that now the entire location and everything situated on it belonged to Barry. Barry found it hard to believe his eyes. He glanced around but couldn't fully trust that all of it was indeed his. Since Monty wasn't raising his pay at first, Monty carefully opened a wooden crate that was filled with AK-47s, and Barry's responsibility was to transport these weapons to that specific country. Monty provided Barry with a detailed map to make the journey significantly easier. It also included information on where the soldiers were strategically stationed. With your assistance, Barry could cleverly outsmart everyone. Furthermore, Monty handed Barry a substantial bag of money that the military had previously seized from Pablo's residence. Now, Barry had absolutely no reason to refuse Monty's offer. Barry fully understood the situation. "So, it's time to tell Lucy everything." Lucy was very angry because he brought her from a good city to a village among 2,000 people where there was nothing in her house, no TV, no washing machine. How would she take care of her child? But then Barry handed her a bag full of money, revealing the truth. He said that with it, they could get a washing machine. He tossed the bills around, showing that they could buy anything with this money. After that, Lucy calmed down completely. Now, in 1981, Barry started with the weapons. Barry started the porting. Carrying a bag full of weapons, Barry reached Nicaragua. He thought these people would welcome him, but upon arrival, he found out that they had no interest in the weapons. Instead, they took his glasses and shoes, which made Barry angry. He immediately called Monty and explained the situation, but Monty didn't give much of a response. He said that Barry's job was to deliver the weapons to the right place at the right time. If those people don't want to use them, then let them be. He returned to that nation for the delivery, but on this occasion he carried a baseball bat for his own protection. If you attempt to advance, I will smash your head. Just take the firearms quietly and depart. This time he also presented some gifts to the adversaries. He was astonished when Pablo and his two brothers appeared at the location, but they were not there to engage in a fight. Instead, they disclosed that they had orchestrated the opponent's actions to secure assistance from America. Pablo requested Barry to smuggle once more, just like the previous time, so that illegal goods can be delivered in the USA. Because Barry now possessed an extraordinary map that Monty had provided him, he did not decline to undertake the task because the likelihood of being apprehended through you was exceptionally low. Over the subsequent days, Barry persistently delivered weapons like a diligent individual and then proceeded to make unlawful deliveries from there to the United States. The more he labored, the more wealth he accumulated. This operation continued to expand and Barry employed 4 additional pilots to expedite the workload. When Barry began generating substantial amounts of money, When Barry commenced generating substantial earnings, the CIA decided to take action. They no longer merely desired to transport weapons. Their aim was to bring adversaries to the United States and provide them with training so they could return and topple their governments. Barry inquired about the location where they would be dropped off for training purposes. Monty responded, "You've been allocated a 2,000-acre airport. Grant us a bit of space, man." Regardless, none of this significantly impacted Barry, who was engaged in transporting illicit goods. There were only a few individuals present at that moment, but as the CIA had intended, it did not transpire. It didn't go as planned. The adversaries, plagued by destitution and famine in their homeland, would escape promptly upon arriving in the United States, declaring they had no intention of going back. However, Barry was not significantly impacted by this until he encountered a substantial issue. Barry possessed a considerable amount of money, yet he couldn't deposit all of it in the bank. People would inquire about the source of the funds. Consequently, he deposited merely a minor portion in the bank and utilized the remainder to enjoy a luxurious life. He bestowed the entire city. He generously distributed this year's baseball game tickets as presents. He purchased a brand new vehicle for Lucy and undertook a complete renovation of the entire residence. However, for every dollar he expended, twice the amount of money was flowing in. Consequently, Barry initiated numerous enterprises to conceal his wealth and employed the townspeople in insignificant positions. He concealed money in every nook and cranny of his home and even interred some in the backyard. Barry was enjoying an exceptional lifestyle, but then one day, Lucy's unproductive. He arrived to meet with him and requested some financial assistance from Barry. Barry did not decline. He desired to get rid of him at the earliest opportunity, but Lucy insisted that he shouldn't merely freeload. She wanted Barry to provide him with a job. Barry couldn't turn down Lucy's request. He took her sibling, JB, to the airplane hangar where he assigned him to work on cleaning tasks. Now, the narrative returned to its starting point. Barry was concealing money within his residence. He was just clearing away the scattered banknotes in the barn when he noticed JB. Barry observed him approaching. Lucy became furious upon discovering that her brother was not fulfilling his work duties and was instead wandering around with pilfered money. Barry inquired about the origin of the money and he claimed he stumbled upon a bag brimming with cash while tidying up. He had purchased the vehicle using that money. Barry was extremely upset and was uncertain about how to handle the situation. The issue did not conclude there. Subsequently, Barry became increasingly negligent. Nearly 2 years later, law enforcement authorities began to take notice of Barry's activities. In an effort to apprehend Barry, the Drug Enforcement Agency, commonly known as the DEA, devised a strategic trap. However, Barry possessed extensive knowledge about aircraft. He was well aware that while the DEA's planes were swift, their operational range was limited. Barry maneuvered over the ocean throughout the entire night, and eventually the police aircraft exhausted their fuel supply and were compelled to return. However, at this point, it was not solely the DEA. The Federal Bureau of Investigation, or FBI, had also started monitoring Barry. Money was consistently flowing to Barry from your operations, and he inevitably caught their attention. Before long, several FBI agents arrived in Mina. During their thorough investigation, one of the FBI agents noticed that there were numerous banks open everywhere and luxury cars cruising on the streets. They were unable to comprehend where all the wealth in this town was originating from. During yet another mission, Barry once again found himself under the scrutiny of the Border Patrol. Just as he had previously outmaneuvered the DEA, the Border Patrol dispatched sent 2 additional aircraft similar to Barry's to guarantee his capture this time. Observing this, Barry, in a fit of frustration, descended and proceeded to land the aircraft on the highway. Upon landing, Barry swiftly exited the plane, tossed some cash towards the children on the street, commandeered their bicycle, and vanished from the scene. Barry hadn't even managed to catch his breath when Pablo's call came through. The DEA was pursuing Pablo as well, so he couldn't remain in Colombia any longer. He needed to escape from there, and subsequently, Barry also departed for that location. As soon as Barry departed, JB seized a bag brimming with money and sped off in his brand new car to indulge in some enjoyment. He carried a suitcase overflowing with cash in his hand and strolled into a restaurant. However, there, he noticed police officers dining. Frightened, JB abruptly fled, but they chased him persistently and finally caught him. At that time, Barry was in a meeting with Pablo. Once Lucy got word of the situation, Barry quickly returned to Mina. He reached out to the top and most expensive lawyer in town to get JB out. But Pablo suspected JB might have told everything to the authorities. So he informed Barry that he would assist him. In resolving all this, Barry realized that if he handled the matter personally, there would be violence. Barry made every effort to decline, but Pablo was not in agreement. Following this, Barry hurried to meet JB. As soon as JB emerged from the station, Barry got him into the vehicle, handed him a package containing enough money to sustain his entire life along with a passport and plane tickets. It was for JB to leave the country, but JB thought Barry wanted to drive him away. In anger, JB told Barry that money should reach him every month, otherwise he would tell the police everything. He then started cursing Lucy as well. Now Barry got very angry and got out of the car to chase JB. But then JB in fear started the car and drove away, with Barry running after him shouting, "Stop you scoundrel, I'll show you." But shortly after, there was a massive explosion in the car in which JB was killed and money flew everywhere. He was rather taken aback, yet deep down he comprehended that it was the work of fools. Barry commenced towing JB's vehicle with his own and abandoned it in the forest. Meanwhile, the CIA discovered that the weapons dispatched to Nicaragua had ultimately ended up in the possession of drug traffickers. The rebels brought from Nicaragua were indeed the ones who had been trained. A very small number of them successfully completed the training and returned to engage in combat. At this point, the CIA came to the realization that summoning them for training had been a significant error, and they requested Monty to call off the entire mission. When Barry observed everyone departing, he inquired of Monty whether there was no further work available for him. However, Monty did not provide a direct response and merely instructed him to await his subsequent signal. At this moment, Barry comprehended that he was entirely ensnared and that Monty no longer required his services, so he wouldn't offer any support either. The following day, when Monty arrived at the office, he instructed to incinerate all the documents associated with Barry. He should have absolutely no connection with us. He instructed his entire team to prepare themselves for a swift escape. Just as Barry and his team were making arrangements to flee, the DEA, ATF, FBI, and local police all arrived on the scene. They promptly took him into custody and transported him to the prosecutor's office to ensure he would face the maximum possible punishment for his actions. Meanwhile, Barry was attempting to bribe them all. "I'll transform your lives. I'll offer 100,000 to each of you. Alright, if that's not enough, I'll provide 10,000. However, then quite unexpectedly, the attorney received a telephone call and Barry perceived that something significant had shifted. The prosecutor emerged with visible anger and commanded that Barry's handcuffs be taken off, and a single phone call liberated Barry. As soon as he exited the building, 2 gentlemen in suits escorted him into a vehicle. Barry assumed they were associates of Monty. However, he was immediately transported to the airport from that location and then directly to Barry. At this point, Barry was required to meet with the president at the White House, which made him quite anxious. He couldn't comprehend the reason for his presence there. The CIA director, along with the army colonel, concluded that Barry would engage with Pablos one final time, allowing them to seize the opportunity to capture clandestine images of Pablos. There would be undeniable evidence that could not be refuted. Barry consented to undertake the task, but he was extremely apprehensive. If Pablo Escobar even got the slightest indication that Barry was attempting to ensnare him, he would utterly destroy him. After bidding farewell to his family, Barry and his assistant commenced their journey. They arrived in Nicaragua after navigating through a tempest. As soon as the airplane door was opened, soldiers were prepared with firearms. Barry became anxious. He began explaining that it was merely a gift. Just at that moment, Pablo arrived. He Pablo instructed the soldiers to eliminate him and Barry became extremely frightened, but then Pablo began laughing and commanded his soldiers to stand down. He had a distinctive sense of humor. At this point, Barry relaxed somewhat and surrendered all the weapons to Pablo and his associates. Barry's partner discreetly activated the concealed camera, capturing unmistakable images of Pablo and his associates' faces. Now the police possessed substantial evidence against them. The director, satisfied, organized a celebration for everyone. Barry successfully accomplished his perilous mission. However, eventually, one unfortunate day, the government reneged on their promise and unmistakably displayed his photographs on television. Their intention was to reveal it to Pablo, but didn't Pablo possess a television? Now he was also aware that Barry had deceived him. He promptly dispatched several of his henchmen to exact revenge, but the situation didn't conclude there. The government entirely turned against him. They charged Barry with smuggling. That is precisely the reason the FBI confiscated all of his financial assets and properties. On the evening prior to the scheduled confiscation, Barry managed to inform his wife Lucy to adorn herself with all the jewelry and depart. This was because anything she wore would be beyond their reach to confiscate. Although Lucy was reluctant to leave her husband behind, she comprehended that there was no alternative. She had to take this step for the sake of her children. The following day, the FBI thoroughly searched Barry's entire residence. Barry came to the realization that now, in his possession, he possessed nothing remaining, neither his family nor financial resources. Over time, circumstances began to stabilize, and Barry's sentence was notably diminished. He understood that the Pablos would not easily release him, so he switched hotel accommodations nightly. Existing in constant fear, he managed to endure for several years, but eventually, one day, a criminal shot him while he was in his vehicle. Please let us know in the comments if you believe what transpired with Barry was just or unjust. See you in the subsequent video.